You're watching the weekly Commanders Report mailbag where I answer your questions on the Washington Commanders. But before we get into this week's questions, if you want to get a question on next week's mailbag, you can do it right now by going into the comment section using hashtag Commanders and then putting your question or a Commanders hot take that you have for the 2023 campaign down there in the comments. Can't wait to see what you guys have cooking for me this week. As for this week, let's get into the questions here, starting with RS Swimmer 8445, who says, we are going to have a top 5 defense and have the best secondary in the National Football League after Emmanuel Forbes wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. I certainly think this defense could be top 5 overall. Chase Young is looking fantastic. Montez Sweat broke out last year. Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are one of the best defensive tackle duos in the National Football League, particularly when it comes to rushing the passer. I think that the linebackers are fine with Jamin Davis and Cody Barton, and then the secondary is really good. And Emmanuel Forbes is somebody that you're coming in here, and I think he's going to be an absolute dynamic playmaker that changes the game for the Commanders defensively. I think that he's somebody with the pass rush going to be as ferocious as I expect it to be. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Emmanuel Forbes to intercept passes. Of course, he was the 16th overall pick, first-round pick for the Commanders this year, and he's a perfect fit for Jack Del Rio's scheme. The big knock on Forbes coming out of Mississippi State was that he's a little bit slender, right? 166 pounds is pretty darn skinny, but he's really, really good in off coverage, and lucky for him, Jack Del Rio plays a ton of off coverage. Now, coming into the Commanders this season, I think that with that being a perfect fit, with his acceleration, with his ball skills, with his ability to take interceptions to the house, he has an NCAA record 6 pick sixes throughout his career with the Bulldogs there in college. I think that's going to translate immediately to the NFL game, and I cannot wait to see what this young man can do in a Commanders uniform. I think he's going to be putting up some big numbers this year, and he is currently my favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year as well. Then we got a question from Kendall Jackson 1162. He says, we have all the guards and no tackles on the offensive line. We need to go out and find at least one good tackle or two if the salary cap allows the Washington Commanders to do so. Now, I do agree that offensive tackle was something that I think that the Commanders absolutely needed to address this offseason, and their best answer for that was to sign Andrew Wiley to a big contract. That's not necessarily something that I would call a big fix. You still got Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle as well. Of course, Cornelius Lucas, Trent Scott, Braden Daniels. You've got a little bit of depth at tackle, I guess, but it's definitely not good depth at this point. So I wouldn't necessarily mind if the Commanders added a tackle. I just don't know which tackle you really are going to pick up at this point. There's not a whole lot of guys with good experience in this league still available. Otherwise, they would have been picked up already. Taylor Lewan is somebody that gets constantly brought up, but he's lost a ton of weight. I don't think he's ready to play in the National Football League right now. And personally, I think that the interior of the offensive line here is something that needs to be addressed quicker. Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul are the two guys getting starting reps at the left guard position. I don't trust either one of those guys to start this year. Nick Gates, I think that, he's fine if he's healthy, but the question is he going to stay healthy? He's been hurt his entire career. He can't stay on the field. And Ricky Stromberg's a rookie. Sam Cosmi, although I think that he's got the physicality and the strength to really thrive in the guard position. He is 6'7", and usually you don't like your guards to be that tall because you lose the leverage advantage. So I'm excited to see what Sam's going to do at right guard this year. But overall, I think the Commanders need to prioritize getting a guard or a center here before the start of the season. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Pick one position to sign if you can only choose one. Would you rather go after an offensive tackle, give me an OT, or would you rather go after an interior lineman in free agency before the start of the season? If you think that, give me an IOL down there in the comments. And that's going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a sec. Take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. Then we got one from Commanders for Life here with a nice picture, I think, of RG3 there. And he says, do you think McLaurin and Dotson will be a top 5 wide receiver duo this year? And I'll say this. I think they have the talent to be a top 5 wide receiver duo this year. I think that if everything goes right, I think they have the talent to do so. I think Terry McLaurin is a top 10 wide receiver in this league right now, and I think he's really been given a bad hand with the type of quarterback play that he's had throughout his career to this point. And you hope that Sam Howell can kind of turn that page a little bit and give him really the first solid starter that he's ever had in his career. And then I think Jahan Dotson reminds me a lot of Stephon Diggs. Great body control, great hands, great after the catch, and a really good route runner as well. The only thing that Dotson doesn't have is elite size, but that's okay. If you got everything else, as we've seen with guys throughout the league in the last decade, you don't have to have the size if you've got everything else. That's the way I feel about Jahan Dotson. And I think that if the O-line holds up and Sam Howell's really good, I think this absolutely could be a top 5 duo. But the question is, will that happen? I think those are two pretty big question marks heading into the season. Then we got one here from Dan Snyder Sucked, and I love that name, man. If the Colts offered you Jonathan Taylor for Brian Robinson and a 3rd-round pick, would you seriously decline that? And the answer to that is actually yes, I would decline that. Now, I know that Jonathan Taylor is somebody that's had really good production in the league throughout his first 3 years. Last year, definitely a down year. Dealt with some injuries, played behind a really bad offensive line, just 4 touchdowns, 4.5 yards per carry. And then back in 2021, he was bloody fantastic, the best running back in football with 1,800 yards, 5.5 yards per rush, and 18 touchdowns behind a really good offensive line there in Indianapolis. Almost carried them to the playoffs that season, but now he's due for a new contract extension. He's going to be asked to be paid like the highest running back in the National Football League, and the Commanders don't have the offensive line to really justify that right now, in my opinion. I wanted to use those resources, that 3rd-round pick, whatever it may be, to go out and get a really good offensive lineman, get a really good left tackle, build up the trenches here so that Brian Robinson Jr. or Chris Rodriguez Jr. or Antonio Gibson can really thrive in this offense right now. I think that the offensive line is a lot more important than getting a top-end running back. So when I look at this trade idea here between the Colts and the Commanders, on paper, it looks good because you're getting like a superstar level running back for just a 3rd-round pick, and then like I would call a solid starting running back and Brian Robinson Jr. So on paper, it looks good, but the fact that you're going to have to pay Jonathan Taylor, the fact that you're giving up a 3rd-round draft pick that you're probably going to want to use on a nice offensive lineman starter in the future, I just don't feel comfortable with that, and I want to build the trenches before you get a star running back. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. Would you make this trade if you were Ron Rivera, Martin Mayhew, and the Commanders front office? Type A if you would accept it, or type D if you're going to decline it. Next question comes from Prime Joe Gibbs here. And he says, with what you have heard from Commanders training camp, what is your record prediction for the Washington Commanders this year? Now, the things that I'm hearing out of camp is that the offense is looking pretty darn rough. The offensive line is giving up a ton of pressure, and the defense is straight up schooling them pretty much every single day. The only days where the offense has really looked sharp is those days, those lighter days when they're going up against the second-team defense. And, you know, although Sam Howell has looked pretty impressive, in my opinion, when the pocket is clean, that's the thing, though. How often is that pocket truly going to be clean this year? And you're playing some really good freaking football teams this year. You got the Eagles twice this year, of course. You've got good teams like the Patriots on the schedule as well. The New York Jets late in the season when Aaron Rodgers and that crew are probably going to be rolling a little bit. The San Francisco 49ers towards the end of the season. You got some tough games coming up here. And with that tough offensive line situation right now, my honest answer for what I think the Commanders are probably going to be at right now is about 8-9. Okay, I think the defense is going to be playing at a top 5 level. They're going to be able to keep you in some football games. And I think that, against the Giants, you'll probably split. Against the Cowboys, you'll at least win one game. I actually think they're going to beat them twice this year. And I think that, that you have a nice little stretch there where you have like the Rams and a couple of pretty bad teams that I think that you can beat there about 3/4 of the way through the season. But, you get a couple of tough stretches throughout the season. The beginning of the schedule is a little bit tough. And, outside of that Cardinals game, which you should be able to win week 1. But I look at this schedule right now, and I look at what this offense and this offensive line in particular is doing in camp right now. And right now, I think it's going to be probably around 8-9, 9-8, which is around where Ron Rivera has had this team over the last couple of years as he's been the head coach. So I think that's probably a more realistic possibility. Now, do I wish it could get up to 11, 12, 13 wins this year and this offensive line proves me wrong? 100%. But my job is to tell you guys the truth and what I actually think, in my opinion. And that is my objective opinion there, is that the offensive line will limit what this team is going to be able to do here in 2023, unless Ron Rivera smarts up here and gets an addition here before the start of the 2023 season. So predict it for me down in the comments section. What is your record prediction for the Commanders this season? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. Can't wait to see how you're feeling. That's going to be it for today's show, guys. Make sure you click that subscribe button for more Commanders content for free here on YouTube leading up to the start of the 2023 season. We're starting to build a movement here at the Commanders Report. So if you want to join our family today, do me a favor, click that subscribe button right now.